How do hunks of junk like the Millennium Falcon or completely non-aerodynamic ships like a TIE fighter manage to fly? I'll be covering all the basics of flight in the Star Wars universe, both in atmosphere and in outer space, in today's Star Wars lore video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another technology-based Star Wars lore episode. Today we will be covering the basics of flight as it exists in both Legends and Canon. And it's actually fairly easy to cover both continuities in one video because really the basics here haven't changed at all with the transition to Disney Canon. In this video I'm going to cover the main pieces of technology that Star Wars ships use during flight and explain how it works. I'll be doing all of this from an in-universe perspective. I won't explain the physics behind these various pieces of technology and whether they'd work or not in the real world. I'm just going to keep it to Star Wars only. I'll also try to organize the topics I cover in this video in a sort of sequential manner. We'll start with how a ship takes off, how it flies within atmosphere, how it flies outside of atmosphere, and then how it jumps to hyperspace. So let's start with takeoff and really the basics of flight within the Star Wars universe. Besides for the hyperdrive, likely the most important piece of starship-based technology within the Star Wars universe is the Antigravity Engine. Now, presumably anti-gravity engines come in several different varieties. However, the one that we're exposed to more often is the Repulsor Lift. Repulsor lifts are used by everything from speeders and sail barges all the way up to large ships. They basically allow a vessel or a thing to achieve lift without having to worry about gravity. However, repulsor lifts and anti-gravity lifts generally are used for more than just achieving a few feet of flight. Depending on the strength of the lifts themselves, repulsor lift technology can actually be used to fly a vehicle basically anywhere within atmosphere. The standard speeder that you'd see flying around Coruscant or even the Rebel Alliance's militarized snowspeeder would use repulsor lifts exclusively for propulsion. Often, vehicles which aren't meant to work outside of the atmosphere are called repulsor lift vehicles or sometimes speeders. Some speeders, despite not being designed to operate outside of atmosphere, nonetheless would have a secondary drive. These engines would often be called thrusters and would operate fairly similarly to the main propulsion devices on starfighters. The Rebel V-Wing is a good example of this. It's an airspeeder and is not able to operate in space. However, it does not use solely repulsor lift technology, but has a dedicated ion engine and secondary boosters. My point is that speeders would have varied quite greatly. Some would have used only repulsor lifts, while others would have had a primary and perhaps even secondary engines. Moving now to ships that were meant to leave the atmosphere. And this includes everything from starfighters to star destroyers. Repulsor lift technology was still very important on these ships. Without anti-gravity tech, the Rebel Alliance's X-Wings would have never been able to take off and fight at the Battle of Yavin. However, the fact that these ships are meant to operate out of atmosphere requires some sort of other propulsion. Many ships in the Star Wars universe use what is called a dual drive engine. This means that they have both hyperdrives and sublight drives. Sublight drives are the most common, appearing on every starship and allowing a vessel to not only break through a planet's atmosphere, but also fly through space. Sublight engines within the Star Wars universe are fairly advanced. Most ships will be able to leave a planet's atmosphere within several minutes of takeoff. This is actually necessary because the main form of interstellar travel within the Star Wars universe, hyperspace, can only be used once a ship has escaped a planet's gravity well. There's not really a whole lot else to say about sublight engines within the Star Wars universe. I guess the only other thing to mention is that the most common variety that we hear of are ion engines. For more on sublight drive technology, I recommend reading any book that focuses heavily on the Millennium Falcon, including the old Lando Calrissian trilogy and any of the Han Solo books. The other component of the dual drive engine is the hyperdrive. This allows ships to travel extraordinary distances in very short amounts of time. When using the hyperdrive, a ship transitions from real space, which is the actual physical universe, to hyperspace. Hyperspace travel was no easy task and generally required a ship's navigational computer to perform extensive calculations and plot a jump route based on inputted coordinates. This could be a very time-consuming process, and depending on how sophisticated and advanced the navigation computer is, plotting a hyperspace jump could take anywhere from seconds to dozens of minutes. If multiple ships needed to make the same jump, one common tactic would be to have the navigational computer on a larger, more advanced ship do the calculations. The route could then be shared with accompanying ships who could jump without having to calculate everything again. The main danger of jumping through hyperspace without a well-prepared route is that gravitational bodies can actually pull you back into real space, and if you're unlucky enough, you can crash into one of those bodies and die. So those are the main propulsion systems used by ships within the Star Wars universe. There are, however, a few other pieces of technology that I'd like to briefly touch on. The first is dampeners. Dampeners allow pilots to pull off incredible maneuvers without being killed by the inertia. Because acceleration exists in space as it does in atmosphere, dampeners are used so pilots don't pass out when they pull massive Gs after doing crazy maneuvers. Another key technology is the flight computer, which allows a pilot to easily interface with a ship. Starships have thousands upon thousands of components. A flight computer helps the pilot control the ship and also performs secondary functions. Sometimes a ship's navigational or weapons computers will be lumped together as part of a general flight computer. Finally, we have shielding. Shielding in the Star Wars universe takes many varieties, but primarily you have ray shielding, which protects against energy, and particle shielding, which protects against particles. Any ships meant to do long-range travel should at least have particle shielding to protect them from small asteroids and other space debris. All types of shielding can generally be referred to as deflector shields. In Legends, ships in atmosphere could use deflector shielding to achieve perfect aerodynamics. This would allow things like X-Wings to fly extraordinarily quickly in atmosphere. I'm not sure if that's been carried over to canon. It was only ever mentioned briefly in Star Wars Legends, so take that with a grain of salt. Shielding was also used for a variety of purposes, including sealing in hangars and just generally protecting from the vacuum of space. Anyway, those are the basics of space and in-atmosphere flight within the Star Wars universe. I hope you now have a better understanding of both the mechanics and the technology involved. This idea was given to me by someone on my Twitch stream last night. I tried to answer it there, but I thought it would make for a fun, full-length video. Let me know if you liked it down in the comments, and by liking this video, of course. I will be again streaming some Star Wars Battlefront 2 today on my Twitch account. You can find that at twitch.tv/EckhartsLadder. Also, make sure to join the Discord at discord.io/EckhartsLadder and follow me on Twitter. I'm sure, again, you can guess the URL. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. This has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.